Now that Princess Peach Showtime has taken the world by storm, it's like the best-selling game on Amazon right now. It's time to really take a look at the developer Goodfeel because, actually, I've always been a big advocate for Goodfeel. I played Wario Land Shake It back in the day, loved it. I played Woolly World, played Crafted World. I was a very big advocate for Crafted World in particular because I think a lot of people like tried to write that off as a pretty mid like weak Nintendo game when it's actually not that bad. It has way better boss fights than Yoshi's Woolly World. But Good Feel is and always has been this really polarizing Nintendo studio, right? Like this isn't an unusual thing for them, right? For them to announce a game and then have everyone try to say that like, oh, that's not gonna be good. It looks kiddie. It looks childish. Oh, I only play mature games for mature gamers. Because this is a company that has a pretty strong portfolio in putting out like 2D platformers with Nintendo franchise characters, right? You have Wario Land Shake It, you have Kirby's Epic Yard, you have the Yoshi games, Woolly World and Crafted World, right? And a lot of those games, especially Kirby's Epic Yarn, had like a lot of like big polarizing mixed reactions, right? Like people hated them. They hated the aesthetics, they hated like the difficulty, they hated like what they're trying to do. Like this isn't a real Kirby game. Like it was a nightmare, for a lot of fans having to deal with this nonsense. Kirby's Epic Yarn to me is like an example of everything wrong that happened in the gaming community in like the mid 2000s, right? That game came out and people legit tried to come out like and say that it was like legit so terrible that it killed the Nintendo brand, right? Because that's what people thought is that this is a kiddie game where you literally cannot die. And that was like a big thing in pushing the narrative that Nintendo had become overly casualized, right? That was a big narrative in continuing the illusion that the hardcore video game consoles were Xbox and PlayStation, right? The PC thing didn't really become relevant until like 2012 or so. So, like that game was like written off and ignored, you know. And I just put a little bit of time into it. It's gonna be like the next Wii game I play through again, right? I popped it into my Wii U, started playing it, and I was really, really surprised at how good it is. The colors, the cheerful music, the animations of the yarn, the mechanics, right? Like this is a legit, really original, fun, clever 2D platformer that really sticks out from other Kirby games. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it's better because, of course, I really, really do love a lot of Kirby games, but like, I think at the very least you can say that Epic Yarn is better than Return to Dreamland, right? And that's really weird to say considering Return to Dreamland is kind of seen as like the return of 2D Kirby to consoles, right? But like, Epic Yarn came first. In a lot of ways, like Epic Yarn might have been a big thing in getting like more people outside of the typical Kirby fan base interested in the Kirby IP, right? Like it really did feel like Epic Yarn was fairly popular for what it was, right? And that paved the way for Return to Dreamland success, and that paved the way for Triple Deluxe's success and then Planet Robobots and now where we're not at now with Forgotten Land, which is the most successful Kirby game of all time, right? So like Epic Yarn does have a really big place in Nintendo history, and I don't think Goodfeel gets enough credit for that. They produced the last Wario Land game ever produced. Shake It, which was criminally underrated, one of my favorite games on Wii. Fantastic animations, great 2D artwork, amazing platforming, great mechanics, like great music. It's so good that when I heard like the Ruins theme in that like Super Smash Bros. Direct back in the day, like Sakurai chose to highlight Wario Land Shake It music in that section, I was just ecstatic that like one of my favorite games was getting hyped up that way. Woolly World, right? The second best Yoshi game ever made, in my opinion, right? Way better than Story, way better than like its sequel Crafted World. Like that game was like very, very strongly slept on, right? My point is, the thing I want to emphasize with this video is that like Goodfeel has been producing nothing but high quality products for Nintendo consoles since like 2008, right? They have a really good track record, right, with this kind of thing. And with Princess Peach Showtime, like I legit feel that this might be the biggest game they've ever produced, right? This legit might be seen as the game that presents Peach as a legit high quality like female video game protagonist or video game protagonist in general, right? Like this game is way bigger than anybody's giving it credit for right now. And Good Feel was behind it. And right now we're kind of in this delusional stage, right, where people are upset that like Princess Peach Showtime is outperforming Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin, but like acknowledge the game is good. You know, people always wonder like why I make these videos, like why I get so aggressive about like people not liking Nintendo games. This is why, right? Peach gets a really legitimately great game on Nintendo Switch, and what happens? Oh, I don't know if that'll be good. Oh, it looks casualized. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like like you saw these people just doing everything they possibly could to downplay this release. And now that it's out, now that it's high quality, now that everyone loves it, like you're seeing a lot of people try to backtrack on it, right? Like that's the narrative right now, right? Is it like, oh, the demo was bad, but like the actual core game is great, you know, but the demo is a pretty good indication of what you get in the game, right? Like it was such a weird like narrative to push that like the demo is somehow different than the base game, that it's somehow worse. Like even though like it it never made any sense, right? It was just people coping and seething about a new Nintendo Switch game in 2024, right? You know, this console was supposed to be replaced in like 2022, and yet it's still going strong, right? Like, like oh, this is like it's remarkable, right? How this game has been such a success, how everybody loves it, but all anybody can do is like try to like, oh, look at the 75 Metacritic score, or like, look at these other games. Like nobody wants to like sit there and acknowledge that like, you know, Princess Peach Showtime is a legitimately good game, right? It makes Peach look like a really cool video game character, and we're still in this phase where nobody wants to admit it. And I think what's even more embarrassing is that like we're still in this period where nobody wants to acknowledge Goodfeel, the developer, as being a developer of high quality Nintendo games, right? That is something that a lot of people brought up when it comes to this release in particular. Huh? Why isn't Nintendo talking about the developer behind the game? Because you're going to discriminate against them, right? Like this has been the trend for the long time. Like what happened when this game was first shown off? Like, oh, who's making this game? Who's making it? Who's making it? Like you were doing that so you could just like try to like find something to complain about when it comes to that studio. Like I saw plenty of people try to say that they wouldn't pick this game up if it wasn't developed in house, right? You know, like completely disrespecting all the other partners that Nintendo has worked with over the years, disrespecting like Next Level Games and Retro and like, you know, Good Feel themselves, right? Like Mercury Steam is a good example, right? Like it's becoming more and more of a problem where you're seeing people try to write off these big major games because of the studios that create them, right? You know, I brought up Mercury Steam. That's a really good example. When Samus Returns came out, like all anybody could do was just try to say that like, oh, they have Mercury Steam, the game is ruined. And then it came out and then people like refused to admit it was good for like years. I think actually like the narrative is still that like Samus Returns is not good. Dread is generally accepted as being great, but like Samus Returns is not. And like that is like an absolute travesty considering how good that game is. And now we're seeing the same thing happen to Princess Peach Showtime, right? Like we're seeing the Pretendos try to discriminate against this legitimately good video game. And I, the Nintendo fan, will not abide by this. I will not stand for it. You know, Princess Peach Showtime is the best game I've played this year by far, and I will stand by that until I play something better.